Welcome to Turn 3, your pit stop for Formula One content. I'm Edgar.
I'm Walter. Let's jump right in.
In this episode, we're going to be talking about the Japanese Grand Prix. But before we do, Walter's written down some facts about the track. So, Walter, take it away.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
You always are. You always are, my friend.
The name of the track is Suzuka International Racing Course. For this Grand Prix, it's going to be 53 laps. The track consists of 18 corners. The length is 5.807 kilometers, which is 3.608 miles. The total race length is going to be 307.471 kilometers, which is 191.054 miles. The lap record is 1 minute 30.983 seconds by Hamilton in 2019. The first Grand Prix, it was on 1987. The top speed for this Grand Prix was 300.1 kilometers per hour, which is 186.5 miles per hour.
It's been a long time since we heard Hamilton breaking any records.
Correct.
Or anything like that.
Everything
changed. Yeah. The world as we know it.
The Formula One world changed completely.
Yeah.
For the race, they were saying like it was going to be, the weather was going to be an issue. It wasn't.
No.
Nothing at all.
Issue.
Yeah, the race day was sunny.
Something happened in practice one, I think.
I think so.
Something.
I'm not sure.
Well,
you tell me.
I had some deja vu about a Williams crashing. You know, I didn't know if they were talking about last weekend or this weekend. So
it was the same.
It was the same one.
Not the same person, yes.
Not the same person, but the same car, right? Like
Correct.
the actual same chassis.
The actual same car.
Yeah. So, of course, we're talking about Logan Sargent.
Correct.
Crashing in Q1.
Practice one, yeah.
Practice one. What do you think?
I feel so bad for Williams in general, mainly Logan. I think he's done a pretty good job so far, but it's not enough. It's not enough for Formula One. That's my personal opinion, to be honest. But yeah, the other thing, like you were saying, is like the car wasn't a new car per se. It's like the fixed car that they broke last race. So maybe it's up to him. There were some images that he was trying to turn, but the car just locked up and he couldn't do nothing. So I feel for him, but at least if you're gonna crash, at least do it in practice and not on race day. I'm pretty sure.
If he had crashed in practice 3, you know, that doesn't give them much time to fix the car for qualities, right?
Yes,
but in this case, like,
yeah, sorry about that. The thing that happened is like he crashed on practice 1, and it wasn't. They didn't make it for FP2, so he didn't have any practice on the second part.
But yeah, going back to the car, I mean, this was the crash car, right? How do you feel about them not giving Albon back his car, you know, the refurbished one?
If they're giving them to them, I feel like the car should be ready pretty much. Also, they brought in some upgrades and the car crashed, so those upgrades are gone.
And it's gone.
And they put the upgrades into this car this week and they crash again, so the upgrades are gone.
And it's gone.
So pretty much they're starting over, man. So I feel for Williams so much. They're hurting right now.
Especially when we talked about this last week. They don't have that extra chassis, right? And as far as I know, they're talking about they don't know when they'll have it ready. So
correct. There might be a possibility that maybe one of the cars isn't ready for the next race. I don't think so. I think both of them are going to be ready. They're probably going to be Frankenstein cars pretty much, like put them together with all the spare parts that you have. The next couple of races for Williams are going to be pretty tough.
Have you seen the meme? I think it's Ben Affleck. He's like, he looks really tired. He's smoking a cigarette or something.
Oh, see.
And it's like Williams mechanics right now or something like that.
After another crash.
Well, that's the editor to put it in there. Mr. Editor, please.
Mr. Editor. So also Daniel Ricciardo had to step back a little bit because they brought in another guy who is a super Formula driver. The guy that they put, it was Japanese. So
then that made it 2 Japanese drivers.
2 Japanese drivers for FP1. That's correct. That's correct.
That's awesome.
I'm pretty sure the Japanese fans were loving it.
What do you think about qualities?
I think they started pretty good. The first part is Q1. The surprise there was Stroll. He went out in the first line. To me, obviously a big surprise. Aston, one of the top 5 teams right now, he got out of Q1, and you know what that means? All of the other teams, their little fangs comes out and they're smelling blood in the water, and it's like, well, there's a spot in the top 10, so we're gonna go for it.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. Then we jump into Q2, right? We lost the 5 slower cars, and then we have the top 15. Nothing much surprised me on Q2. The only thing it was, I don't know if you noticed, Tsunoda made it for Q3, and the last place, I think it was P10, and then Ricardo P11. So he was almost there, just showing Tsunoda that he's a little bit step above Ricardo right now.
And this is the second time in a row that he's gotten into Q3.
This season, Tsunoda has been the better driver of both RBs.
Yeah, he's been doing really well in the car, and I think Danny Rick needs to
step it up.
Yep.
After Q2, after Ricardo's gone, Tsunoda made it. We have pretty much the 5 top teams. That's pretty much, except Stroll that is out, and then Tsunoda in racing day.
For racing day. Race day was at very late at night for us.
For us, it was really surprising, I guess. It was hard, to be honest. At the end of the day, I actually watched the post race show, so I was like 4 a.m. watching it, man. I was like dying.
Yeah, same here. So after the race finished, I had to do dishes and stuff like that. So I didn't cut it until like 3 in the morning.
Oh
it
my
was
god.
bad.
Oh my god. They line up. The lights turn on, and then they turn off, and away they go.
And away they go for
two
or three turns, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Why don't you tell us what happened?
So Max Verstappen, great coming out. Checo too. I think the Ferraris had a better start, and I don't know if you noticed, both RBs, Tsunoda and Daniel had a really bad start. So they went. A lot of the other drivers just passed them. So we get to turn 1, turn 3, turn 4. I think it was turn 5 when we saw it. We saw a crash. Daniel Ricciardo and Albon into the wall.
So it's interesting because the way that they were the way they crashed, and then the way that the cameras were positioned.
Mm-hmm.
One angle showed, and you could see the Red Bull, the RB car.
Yeah.
And then from the other one, you could see the Williams. And so for a second, I was like, oh no, the Williams. And then they switched to the other, and I was like, oh no, it's not the Williams, it's the RB. And then they went, and I was like, oh, obviously it's both cars that crashed into each other, so they're both there.
Yeah.
And my thought was like, which car is this? Which Williams car is this? You know?
Mm-hmm. If we go to probabilities and the numbers, it would tell you it was probably Sargent. But it wasn't.
But it was not. It was their last remaining good car.
Kind of. But yes, in the wall. So there's no more good remaining car anymore for Williams. This is my opinion. I think it was Daniel's fault. I think he had a bad start, and you could see it on his point of view. Like, I think it was like 3 or 4 or even 5 cars that just passed him because he was such a bad start. And then of course I was listening to some interviews, and it seems like these cars are way bigger than old Formula 1 cars, but the Suzuka track is like from older times, so it's really narrow. It was made for the older cars pretty much. With these big cars, it's pretty hard for 3 of them to go through the same corner per se. I saw some space on the left. I think people were saying a Stroll was there. I think there was some space right there.
He did have room. I think I agree with you there, but in the heat of the moment, you're between 2 cars or whatever.
Correct.
Like it's hard, right? Like you can't see everything. If I had to put the blame on somebody, it would be on him, on Danny Rick.
No, I totally agree. I think he's a very charismatic person, a great driver. We have seen it, multiple race winner for sure. But lately he hasn't shown it. I think everybody was, since he joined RB, since he came back from Formula 1, I think everybody was thinking he will come back and just be the same Daniel Ricciardo that wins some races, but he put in a show for sure. And he hasn't done that.
You know, if you want to blame the car, for example, I mean, Tsunoda's doing well.
Exactly.
So it's not, it can't be completely the car's fault,
He needs to step it up because Red Bull, which is his seat, is a Red Bull seat. They don't wait for anyone. You have seen it before with Albon. They cut Albon when he was on Red Bull. They cut Gasly. and stuff like that. So if he doesn't step it up, I'm pretty sure Liam Lawson will love that seat, and he has shown us that he can score points in that car.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and even just last year, I mean, the reason that Danny's in the car is because they got rid of Nick, right?
Nick de Vries, correct.
Because he wasn't performing.
Red Bull is cutthroat, for sure. He's one of the... They have a lot of drivers. Even if we don't see them, they have a lot of drivers in junior categories or doing other stuff. And I'm pretty sure any of them would like to jump into the Formula One and be a Formula One driver, for sure.
I think his biggest threat is, like you said, Liam Lawson, right? Because he's the reserve driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's probably the person who is most prepared to take that seat if it opens up, right? Because he practices with them. He does the things that they do.
Yeah, what the reserve driver does, they do a lot of simulations for the team. So he knows the tracks. He knows how the car performs on those tracks. So yeah, he would be the best choice. But we'll see. We'll see if Daniel steps up. I'm assuming they're going to give him probably till half the season, maybe. We'll see how much more. All of the cars straight into the pits, and the teams are able to change the tires if they choose to.
The RBs, right? They start on mediums, which is slower, let's say, than the people who were behind them who are on soft tires. So, yeah, they end up getting that advantage over them in the short term, but then in the long term, they have to pit sooner than the RBs
medium.
and the medium tires. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, and I think all of the teams, they had their strategies, of course, before the race. I think that crash on the lap 1 threw everything out of the window pretty much, because it's like, okay, we're gonna go into the pits, we're gonna put new tires, and now it's like, well, they're not into temperature. We already did like 2 laps. What are the other teams are gonna do? So I think everything changed. Everything changed after that.
So I didn't hear about it until lap 4, but apparently something happened at the restart between the 2 Alpines.
Correct. I think on lap 4 we saw the Ocon radio announcement. He came out saying like he got on some damage from crashing into Gasly.
They're having enough trouble as it is, just with perfectly working cars.
Correct.
These things just they make it even harder for them. So
yeah, and the other thing is like they're crashing into each other, which let's be honest, no team should be doing. It's probably the worst feeling when your 2 drivers crash into each other. At least they didn't crash into the wall, but yeah, they got damaged, and it wasn't the same race for both of them after that. From what I heard, like Gasly and Ocon are not the best friends, to be honest. There's some animosity in there.
This kind of thing is probably just gonna exacerbate things a little bit.
Yeah, and like you said, the team is not having the grace, the better of the years, I think. Yeah, it's pretty much a bad year for them. I don't see them getting better anytime soon, unless they do upgrades or something like that. But to be honest, even the upgrades, I don't think that it's gonna work out for them. I think we're gonna see Alpine on the last team. Unfortunately, I think that's what happened at the end of the season. But we'll see if they can bring some upgrades and help them out. The team is not happy. The drivers are not happy. The fans are not happy. It's just I think they're just trying to do the best as possible and just survive this season, and hopefully a better car next year. On lap 14 now, we hear in the radio Joey has to come into the pits, and then they retire the car.
So I don't know if I missed it or if it was too late and I was half asleep or something. What happened? I don't know that I...
So nothing really happened. Like you wouldn't be able to see it. There was no smoke or crash, nothing like that. But I think 1 or 2 laps before that, like lap 12 or something, he went into the pits. And everybody was like, please do it right.
Yeah,
first of all, please do it right. Which they did. It was a slow stop, but they did it right. But he came in 2 laps after, and everybody was like, what happened? Like, what's going on? And then we hear into the radio that it seems to be a gearbox problem, and they have to retire the car.
It's funny you mentioned, right? Like the pit stops. Like, in my head, I was celebrating a 5-second pit stop, which is terrible normally.
For Formula One, it's terrible.
For Formula One. But compared to a 50-second pit stop or whatever it was.
It's great for them.
Yeah. So we fast forward to lap 23, right? And then we have an influx of cars, running into the pit. for changes in tires. All of these cars were fighting for positions,
For P10.
For P10. It was a very crucial moment in the race. This stops being so much on the driver and more on the pit stop crew, right? Like we need to get these. We can't do a 50-second pit stop, basically.
So of course everybody came in super quick into the pit stop, and I think the order is important. I think Magnussen was the first one, and then 4 more cars. But if you think about it, if everybody comes down at in order, they should come out at the same order, right? But that's not what happened in this case, because like you said, the pit crews were the ones that make these decisions, right? We need to give a round of applause to RB's pit crew.
Good job.
Good job. Yeah. So yeah, I think that was the main reason. That's one of the highlights for me on the race. I think Tsunoda was like the third in that row of 5 cars. He was the third. He came in third on the pit stop, and he came out first. So he was ahead of everybody else on the pit stop. It was thanks to his pit crew.
Yeah, and if you look at the difference in time between like pit stops, like and not the whole pit stop, but just
those 5.
The time that they spend, because there's a difference, right? Like the total time for a pit stop is like 20 seconds, right?
Correct.
But like the time that you're parked there, like when you get to your pit crew and they change your tires and they do the stuff that they need to do. In this particular case, the time it took them to change Yuki's tires compared to the time it took them to change like the other team's tires, we were like we're talking fractions of a second, like thousandths of a second. We're talking about 2 seconds, 2.3 seconds, and that can change everything.
I think Yuki came into the radio saying like, "Oh, great job, guys! Like it was top job." Yeah. He was really happy, and I think it was well deserved for the pit crew. They did a great job, and again, he came in third from those 5 cars, and he came out the first one. So I think that was one of the key moments in the race for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's funny you mentioned the radio, because he says, great job, guys. You guys did great, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm so used to hearing him be like angry and mad and stuff like that. Is he being sarcastic is what went through my mind. And I was like, no, like they did do a good job. So it was just it threw me off a little bit to hear him be so complimenting.
That moment was what got him his P10 at the end of the race, right? We're skipping ahead, but spoilers. Yeah, I think that was the reason why he was able to get to that place. And also, we need to remember it was his home race, right? So you want to do great at your home race. If you wanna suck at the other 23 races, at least on your home race, you wanna be good.
That crucial pit stop, the fact that they were able to get him that advantage in position. And then, it was up to him to maintain it, of course. But, again, spoilers, he did. And then he scores points in his home race, which is phenomenal.
I was listening to an interview he did after the race. And he was saying like, yeah, I did P10, but it's my home race, so it feels like P1. So he was super happy. Just at least he got a point to lap 42. And then our favorite guy. I just saw yellow flag on the TV, and then I look at the map and I saw Sargent was not moving. I was like, oh my god, I cannot believe this.
Pause for a second, and I'm gonna give them a little bit of insight.
Yes.
Our audience, right? We were texting during the race.
Yes.
And I was telling you, because there was a point where Logan Sargent was in like P11 or something like that. He was doing relatively well. I mean, relatively well. And I was like, dude, if he gets points, he will be
tattoo
exactly.
his face on my
I will buy all of his merch, and I was gonna go full in. Sadly, that didn't happen.
He went white. He went off into the gravel pretty much.
Right.
I think it was turn 10 or turn 9. I don't remember which one, but a lot of drivers have had some problems on that one. But yeah, it was a little bit dangerous when he came back into the track, because there was a yellow flag, but you could still see all of the cars were coming in super quick, pretty much.
Yeah, and I wonder, and it's not something that I saw, is was he just not able to, because he wasn't in the wall. He had room to maneuver and maybe turn around and, leave head first or whatever. But he was reversing, so I was like, oh, maybe he couldn't get enough traction in that direction. So maybe
Formula One cars, like if they try to go straight, they spin too much on their wheels. Maybe when it's reversed, it has more traction.
I see.
So maybe it's easier for them to get out of like the gravel. So yeah, after the Sargent incident, a couple more laps. I think it was around lap 45 or so. I don't know. I don't know if you noticed, but there were some team orders from Ferrari. First of all, we saw Carlos getting closer to Charles from behind, which he had better tires at that moment, so he was gonna pass him, I think, in later. But we heard that we heard in the radio for Charles, like, don't waste too much time with Carlos, pretty much telling him just let him go.
Yeah, it's interesting to because it's exactly what you said, right? It's don't fight him. It's just basically them saying he's gonna pass you. The data shows that he's gonna pass you. He has better tires. He's gonna do it. So don't waste time trying to defend. We can't afford, an accident. So basically, let him pass is what they were saying.
Yeah, the thing is, like, they were in different strategies and tire strategies. I think Carlos had newer tires, and actually Charles did a great job. I don't know if you noticed, he had one of the longest first stints on the tires. He went super long, and that's why he was able to do. He didn't made it to the podium, but he finished P4, and he started P8. So he made some things to that, and I think it was because of the tire strategy. He went super long on the first medium tires, and I think that was the reason where he could recover a lot of positions during the race. At lap 53, we saw a fight between Alonso, Piastri, and Russell. I don't know if you noticed, I think Alonso was doing a Sainz. He was doing the same thing Carlos was doing in an old race, where he didn't accelerate too much, but he had another car in between them, and he was just playing around with them, like, oh, you want to pass me? I'm going to go a little bit more, a little bit less, a little bit more. He was just playing with them because Russell had better tires than Piastri, but Piastri was in between Alonso and Russell, so he was using Piastri as a wall.
The real threat to Alonso was not Piastri, it was Russell.
Correct. Right? Piastri and Alonso were fighting over 10 laps already, and Piastri was not able to pass him pretty much
for whatever reason.
And then Russell was catching up because he had better tires.
Alonso is using Piastri as a barrier essentially between him and Russell. Right?
Correct. And I don't know if you remember, I don't exactly remember which race was it, but Carlos Sainz did the same thing. That's where it came from, and he did. And Alonso, to me, did pretty much the same thing. He's a fox. He's a silver fox.
He still has it.
Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix again. Then we have Checo Perez second place, and then Carlos Sainz P3 for your podium.
Yeah. So we go back to Max Domination. Checo close second, or maybe not close second, but Checo second, and then in this case, we're talking about
Carlos Sainz, Sainz, the guy with no job for next year, getting into the podium again.
I'm telling you, man, where is he going to end up? And it just every time he races and he does this well, where's he going to end up? I'm very excited about what could happen.
Silly season is coming.
Yeah. Now, our favorite segment. We're gonna rate the race.
Okay.
I went first last time, so it's your turn.
Oh my god. I like the race, but I don't think it was for some reason it wasn't as appealing as last one to me. I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10.
The best way that I can describe this race was that it was a race for Formula One nerds. Mm-hmm. Basically, it was a very strategy heavy race. Very when do we pit, the optimal time to pit, and it was very like that. There was a lot of overtakes, but they were very calculated overtakes. Nothing like unexpected happened. So, with a few exceptions, of course. So I agree. It wasn't particularly exciting, in terms of like, oh, look at all this crazy stuff that happened. It was more of this is kind of the way that races should be, I guess, in general. And then we go back to a lot of Max Domination and stuff like that. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to give it a 7 too. And I can't give it anything higher than that. And I don't want to go any lower than that. So.
Okay.
So for the first time, we have the same.
We agree. For the first time ever, we agree on the race. Yes. Next race, China, Shanghai. It's the first sprint race of the season.
Okay.
So I'm excited about it. Formula One has not driven in China since 2019, so it's been 5 years. So to be honest, I don't know how these new cars are gonna go into China, but we'll see. My predictions for the 2024 China Grand Prix sprint race. It's gonna be Max Verstappen P1. I'm gonna give Charles Leclerc P2 and Lando Norris P3.
Lando Norris. Okay.
I think they are the best at shorter spans races. In the sprints, I think they're gonna be better. I think it's more about the qualifying pace or how much, because again, it's just like I think 10 laps or so. So you have to be your top game.
I'll give you my podium as well. P1, Max Verstappen. There's no surprise there. And I think we see P2, Carlos Sainz, and P3, Charles Leclerc. I think that time and time again, Ferrari has showed us that they do well in qualifying, and then race pace comes and the Red Bulls just dominate, right? During race pace. But the sprint being a shorter race, I think that they're going to be more able to maintain that kind of, like that lap pace that you get during their qualies. So I think we'll see 2 Ferraris in the podium. As much as that hurts me to say that we won't see Checo up there, but I think that's what will happen. Now we go to race predictions, right?
Now your turn.
Now it's my turn. This might surprise you, but
yeah. Logan
Sargent again. Yes. No. P1 Max Verstappen.
What a surprise,
dude! I think we've gotten the last of his DNFs. I think from now on,
I think in the future predictions, we're not gonna say P1 anymore. I think we're just gonna go with P2 and P3 pretty much.
Or we do P2, P3, and P4 just because
to make it.
We shift the podium down
at
like
least,
one spot.
That's a good idea. We'll see. Let us know what you think.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Anyways, Max Verstappen P1. I think Checo P2, just because again, over race pace and over the entirety of a race, the car is just better equipped for that. And P3, it's not so much that I'm sure or that I'm convinced that this is going to happen. It's just what I want to see. One of the McLarens. And if I have to be more specific than that, if you're going to demand that from me, I'll say Lando.
Your first 2, I agree.
Okay.
So let's talk about it. For the race predictions, I totally agree with you. It's going to be Red Bull 1-2, Max Verstappen, Checo Perez, and I think I'm gonna go with Carlos Sainz. I think he's been on his game. I think he's gonna be the same thing on China. I think he's gonna do P3 again, and he has been on the podium all this season, so why not continue that streak? We'll see how far he can go.
I want to see it. I want to see him go the whole just
24
P2s,
podiums.
P3s,
Even if he doesn't, well, he already won one, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But 24 podiums without a job, that sounds great for your resume.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. That's it for us, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you on the next race.